Take a good look at this map. The red traces back to Japan, where the Fukushima power plant disaster occurred. The people who built this nuclear power plant knew that Japan has earthquakes. They knew that a disaster was not just likely, but likely soon. It was never a question of if, but when the disaster would take place, and these greedy people allowed their own desire to get rich, not only on the construction of this power plant, but 400 others around the globe, just waiting for the right event, an earthquake or the passing of a large planet or massive system of planets, which has been predicted for 3,600 years, so nobody can claim they didn't know. They knew very well, and they watched it on the Hubble Space Telescope as it was coming in. We have a whistleblower who said he watched it for years coming in, growing in size, and his buddies were in the CIA. So we know that they knew, and we know that they took profits instead of doing what is wise. If this is our best leadership, our species has no hope of survival. These are not leaders. They're driven by greed. They don't even care about their own families. This radioactive material will poison the people of Earth for many generations. One more thing to add. They had inventions which tap into the 0 point of virtually endless supply of free energy. Mass and energy are two forms of the same thing, the aliens tell us. And so energy is mass, and mass is frozen energy. Einstein simplified it. E equals mc squared. Energy is mass at the speed of light squared. Now let me give you a quick explanation of 0 point energy. If you remove all matter from space, you would still have energy there, and it's enormous. In 1 cubic centimeter, you have so much energy that if you were to convert it to mass, the amount of mass would exceed all the visible universe that we can perceive. Will that run your air conditioner in summer, heat your house in winter, recharge your electric car? I think so. An invention comes into the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and the inventor is killed. It seems his invention threatens the powers that be and might render their monopoly on energy worthless. They can't have that, so they kill him and deny us abundant free energy forever. Another invention comes into the U.S. Patent Office, and it's seized. The inventor is threatened. He is told to be quiet about it, or his family will be killed. Another invention comes into the patent office, and yet another inventor is told that his invention will not be allowed on the basis of national security, which means it threatens those who own the oil companies, and there is still too much oil in the ground, so he can't bring us any free energy device which will end the monopoly on oil. That inventor is silenced, and 6,000 others who all made important discoveries. But since the slaves are not allowed to be free, the liberating inventions are seized by government. Government is not here for the people. Government is not by the people and for the good of the people. Government is all about greed and control and monopoly and profits to a handful of insiders and parasites who would rather you go to work than them, because they like to vacation and spend your money, and if you end their racket, they will not have nearly as many vacation homes or lavish vacations. And so nuclear power plants are built, they fall into disaster, and the entire Pacific Ocean is poisoned. And all the fish that you eat has concentrated radioactive materials, and when you eat that fish, you glow in the dark. I hope the insiders are happy with the results. They are responsible for the murder of millions of people who die of bone cancer and other health maladies, all traced back to radioactive fish, radioactive waters. It's a totally unfair system, and look at this map. Look at what greed did. This is what greed leads to. The entire Pacific Ocean is poisoned with radioactive material. This is the result of greed. Greed makes people stupid. These people who did this are service to self types, and they will destroy themselves and their families, along with yourselves and your families. They are taking down the entire human species because of their own selfish greed. They're poisoning the earth and taking all of us with them. Now, are you the viewer to blame? Not before today, but from this day on, you must do something. Michael Snyder, the author of this article, is asking you to take this article and spread it. I'm going to read it to you. I have no copyright on my reading or my video. Don't ask for permission and don't bother giving me credit. I don't need credit. I'm not about credit. I agree with Michael Snyder that the word must get out and that you are the instrument of change. Draw a circle around your feet. That's your circle of influence. You. You must take action. Stop yelling, "Wake up, people." This does not wake up anybody. Read an article. Michael Snyder has provided an excellent article here. It wouldn't hurt if you read it and give your 2 cents worth, as I'm doing. I'm going to give you my version of reality. Michael Snyder is giving you his version of reality. And when I read his article and I add what I think, it's a double impact. It's better than either one of us acting alone. And if you get into the mix and you hear my words and you read Michael Snyder's words, you're going to have some words of your own. And they're going to reach a certain group of people that neither Michael Snyder can reach nor I. And this is what it's going to take for us to become the new source of truth. The media has let us down. They're intimidated by an IRS audit. They cannot enjoy the freedom that they were supposed to have according to the Constitution. They're under threat. From who? From government. These people who tell Obama what to do, they are the permanent government. You don't know their names. You don't see their faces. And when you get tired of the government, you get rid of Obama and they put someone new in his place, and he works for the same people. They're calling all the shots. At the end of this article, Michael Snyder asks you, as an American or a citizen of the earth, to do something to get the word out to others. I'm anxious to get to the truth. I'm anxious to get the truth out as I see it. And I feel that 316 million Americans is an enormous force, more powerful than all of the propaganda stations put together. So many are watching the propaganda television news, and they think that's reality. Whatever they are told, it's fed into their brains through their eyes and their ears, and they believe it, because they have no alternative. What I want to do is provide them with an alternative way of thinking. People say, "You have opened my eyes." Well, all I tried to do was understand the world truthfully and pass it on in whatever form I can. And some people say it changed their way of thinking. Now, when you've been railroaded, you need a diversion path. Perhaps one that gets you back to reality. Because the illusions that have been created and sold to you through your eyes and your ears, and they have told you what to think so you don't have to think, this is slave mentality by a dictatorial government that doesn't care about you, only cares about money. Life is not about money, it's about spiritual development. I'm not religious, and you know that. I don't like religious people. I think they're all mentally ill because they hound me. I tell them I don't want to hear about Jesus, and they hound me. They bring scriptures to my page, and they behave just like someone who's mentally ill. I want them to stop doing this. Stop bringing Jesus to my page. Take it to church and give it to people who want to be brainwashed. I don't. I want to be free thinking. I want to make up my own mind without being coerced. I think churches attract people who are already mentally ill, and it gives them a chance to be mentally ill and fit in. And that's why I say all religious people are mentally ill. They're not rational beings. The things they do are just like people who are totally nuts. And when a government exploits this aspect of our personality, this tendency to become worshipers, and they try to make us worship someone as corrupt and evil as Obama, who says he has the right to kill anybody he wants, anytime he wants, for any reason he wants, and that he's going to ignore the Constitution, ignore due process of law, ignore probable cause, ignore their right to a speedy trial or to be judged by their own peers. A president who grants himself that kind of power is a terrible danger to the rest of the world. Not just Americans, but the entire world, because the U.S. is a superpower. And I think that our superpower status has been exploited. I want to break it up. We don't need one superpower. What we need are 50 small countries. Actually, they're not small. They're medium-sized countries. Each state, if it was a country, would be a medium-sized country. Wyoming is bigger than 65 other countries. There are only about 200 countries in the whole world, and Wyoming is bigger than 65 of them. Only 30 countries are bigger than California. So we are very capable of being 50 countries who all cooperate. We don't need a passport to cross over the border. We can run everything just like it is, except get rid of the federal government through secession. We secede from the Union. We quit, and we rejoin without a federal government. As the people discover the truth through you and 316 million other Americans, an awakening will take place. And they will reject the propaganda television news. And they will ask more important questions on elections. They will recognize that our country has been taken over by a bunch of Nazis. And that what they have in mind for us is depopulation, which means eliminating 90% of us. And the disasters of nuclear power plants is going to take care of a lot of that. The media is never going to bring the truth to the people again. We have to do it. We can do it one video at a time if we are diligent, and we can flood YouTube with potent, hard-hitting videos which bring the people the truth. If we have to depend on whistleblowers who are called traitors and they face prison time and even murder for doing the right thing, then we're not going to get much truth from the whistleblowers. Only bits and pieces. But it's okay because we can pick up those pieces and make sense out of them and get the full story and bring it to the people. But we can't do this without your help. There is something you can do. And up until today, maybe you have been free of guilt. But after today, you are culpable. You must do something. If you can't think of anything to do, then let me give you some ideas. Copy a video that you like. Put it up somewhere or link to it. And post this link on 10 blogs every day. That would be helpful. One of my viewers is Michael Davino. He posts my videos on Facebook, and he's doing a great job of spreading the truth. When he gets to the FEMA camp, I hope they treat him well, but when we get to the FEMA camps, it's all over for us, those who spread the truth. Michael Davino knows the risks he takes in spreading the truth, and he does it anyway. Some will call him a traitor because he brought the truth to the people, but I call him an American hero. The Nazis want you to think that anyone who reveals the truth is a traitor. This is not true. This is propaganda. This is shaping your thinking, controlling your mind, telling you what to think. Don't allow anyone to tell you what to think. There are over 400 nuclear power plants, and each one is a risk the size of Fukushima or Chernobyl. There was never any reason to build these power plants because we always had free energy. We've had it for a long time. But it's kept from the people because a few people want to get rich. And they have worked themselves up into a monopoly on oil, and they don't want to give up that monopoly. Arie de Geus invented a battery that never needs to be recharged, and they killed him at the airport. They used the Venus shooter, and they gave him a heart attack. He was in his 50s. A brilliant inventor who not only invented a battery that never needs to be recharged, but he figured out how to deactivate radioactive material and render it harmless. Now the aliens already have this technology, and I've read about it already. And that's what we need right now. We need some alien assistance to clean up this mess. And we need to shut down all of these nuclear power plants and switch to free energy. Clean, cheap energy. And this will bring prosperity to the entire world. Imagine that you didn't have to work to earn money to put gasoline in your car, or to pay an electric bill, or to pay a gas bill, or to pay for the cooling or heating of your home in summer and winter. What if? What if you could grow food indoors with lights and the electricity was free? You wouldn't have to go to the store and pay them exorbitant prices for products that have been shipped around the world. The average food that comes to your table traveled 1,500 miles. And you know why? Because bunker oil is sold by the oil companies, and they want to make sure that they sell a lot of bunker oil. And so you have to pay sky-high prices for fruits and vegetables that could be grown right next to the grocery store. And the shipping cost would be zero. When you buy an apple, 90% of the cost of that apple is shipping costs. Transportation costs. Gets on a ship, trucks delivered it to the ship. It's loaded onto the ship. Then it gets to an American port and it's unloaded and it's put on trucks and it's shipped. And all of this gasoline and diesel and bunker fuel all has to be paid for by somebody. It's a transfer system whereby your money is handed over to the oil companies. And Russia doesn't have any incentive whatsoever to change it because they're sitting on a gold mine. If they would just realize that they're much richer with free energy. Everybody enjoys free energy. It would be a boon to everyone. But instead, they're selfish and greedy. And so we have nuclear power plants. And now you're looking at a map that is the result of greed. Destroying the planet for the buck. Our leadership is anything but leadership. We would be better off if a 4-year-old were in the top position of this once great nation. Just look at this map and see the red lines carrying toxic nuclear wastes across the Pacific Ocean, contaminating fish that you eat, poisoning the coasts of Washington, Oregon, California, Mexico, Hawaii, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Venezuela, and Colombia. And who benefits from this? Everyone suffers, including the bastard who made the most money from this fatal mistake. How many people will die from this Fukushima disaster? I believe that the person who made a killing from this plant knew very well that this would happen one day, and that day has arrived. I wonder where he is and where his family is. Wherever they are not safe. Nobody is safe from this nuclear radiation. Everyone on Earth is affected by it. You're going to see bone cancer and many health problems, as Michael Snyder points out in this article. Let's get started. Right now, a massive amount of highly radioactive water is escaping into the Pacific Ocean from the ruins of the destroyed Fukushima nuclear facility in Japan. This has been going on all day, every day, for more than 2 years. The enormous amounts of tritium, cesium, and strontium that are being released are being carried by wind, rain, and ocean currents all over the northern hemisphere. And of course, the west coast of the United States is being hit particularly hard. When you drink water or eat seafood that has been contaminated with these radioactive particles, they can stick around for a very long time. Over the coming years, this ongoing disaster could potentially affect the health of millions upon millions of people living in the northern hemisphere, and the sad thing is that a lot of those people will never even know the true cause of their health problems. For a long time, the Japanese government has been trusting TEPCO to handle this crisis, but it now has become abundantly clear that TEPCO has no idea what they are doing. In fact, the flow of radioactive water has gotten so bad that authorities in Japan are now calling it an emergency. Highly radioactive water seeping into the ocean from Japan's crippled Fukushima nuclear plant is creating an emergency that the operator is struggling to contain, an official from the country's nuclear watchdog said on Monday. This contaminated groundwater has breached an underground barrier, is rising toward the surface, and is exceeding legal limits of radioactive discharge, Shinji Kinjo, head of a nuclear regulatory authority, NRA task force, told Reuters. The amount of water we're talking about is absolutely enormous. According to Yahoo, 400 metric tons of water is being pumped into the basements of destroyed buildings at Fukushima every single day. The utility pumps out some 400 metric tons a day of groundwater flowing from the hills above the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant into the basements of the destroyed buildings, which mixes with highly irradiated water that is used to cool the reactors in a stable state below 100 degrees Celsius. TEPCO is trying to prevent groundwater from reaching the plant by building a bypass, but the recent spikes of radioactive elements in seawater have prompted the utility to reverse months of denials and finally admit that tainted water is reaching the sea. And of course, all that water has to go somewhere. For a long time, TEPCO tried to deny that it was getting into the ocean, but now they are finally admitting that it is. TEPCO said on Friday that a cumulative 20 trillion to 40 trillion becquerels of radioactive tritium has probably leaked into the sea since the disaster. The company said it was within legal limits. Tritium is far less harmful than cesium and strontium, which have also been released from the plant. TEPCO is scheduled to test strontium levels next. 40 trillion becquerels of radioactive tritium have gotten into the Pacific Ocean? And that is what they are publicly admitting? The reality is probably far worse. And all that tritium is going to be around for a very long time. You see, the truth is that tritium has a half-life of about 12 years. But strontium is even worse. Strontium can cause bone cancer, and it has a half-life of close to 29 years. And now TEPCO is admitting that extremely dangerous levels of strontium have been escaping from Fukushima and getting into the underground water, and of course the underground water flows out into the Pacific Ocean. TEPCO said in late June that it had detected the highly toxic strontium-90, a byproduct of nuclear fission, that can cause bone cancer if ingested, at levels 30 times the permitted rate. The substances which were released by the meltdowns of the reactors at the plant in the aftermath of the huge tsunami of March 2011 were not absorbed by soil and have made their way into underground water. Subsoil water usually flows out to sea, meaning these two substances could normally make their way into the ocean, possibly affecting marine life and ultimately impacting humans who eat sea creatures. Cesium has an even longer half-life than strontium does. It has a half-life of about 30 years, And according to samples that were taken about a month ago, levels of cesium at Fukushima have been spiking dramatically. Let me explain half-life. If a radioactive material decays over a period of time, giving off poisonous radioactive materials which change DNA, causing bone cancer and killing individuals. If it has a half-life of 30 years, that means that in a period of 30 years, only half of the material still remains. Another 30 years, half again, and another 30 years, half again. And so you can see that it's going to take a very long time to get rid of all of it. It keeps being cut in half every 30 years. Samples taken on Monday showed levels of possibly cancer-causing cesium-134 were more than 90 times higher than they were on Friday at 9,000 becquerels per liter. Tokyo Electric Power, TEPCO, revealed. Levels of cesium-137 stood at 18,000 becquerels per liter, 86 times higher than at the end of last week, the utility said. Quote, "We still don't know why the level of radiation surged, but we are continuing efforts to avert further expansion of contamination," unquote, a TEPCO spokesman stated. When cesium gets into your body, it can do a tremendous amount of damage. The following is an excerpt from a New Scientist article, that's New Scientist one word, that described what happens when cesium and iodine enter the human body. Moreover, the human body absorbs iodine and cesium readily. Quote, "Essentially, all the iodine or cesium inhaled or swallowed crosses into the blood," unquote, says Keith Baverstock, former head of radiation protection for the World Health Organization's European office, who has studied Chernobyl's health effects. I don't trust the World Health Organization as far as I can throw them. It was the World Health Organization that contaminated vaccines given to African kids for smallpox with the AIDS virus. And over 90% of the children born in that area have AIDS. In India, it's 51%. This is a crime against humanity committed by the World Health Organization. It is a conspiracy to contaminate and make people unhealthy, and I don't trust them at all. Next paragraph. Iodine is rapidly absorbed by the thyroid and leaves only as it decays radioactively with a half-life of 8 days. Cesium is absorbed by muscles, where its half-life of 30 years means that it remains until it is excreted by the body. It takes between 10 and 100 days to excrete half of what has been consumed. And it is important to keep in mind that it has been estimated that each spent fuel pool at the Fukushima nuclear complex could have 24,000 times the amount of cesium that was produced by the nuclear bomb that the U.S. dropped on Hiroshima at the end of World War II. Overall, the Fukushima nuclear facility originally contained a whopping 1,760 tons of nuclear material. That is a massive amount of nuclear material. Chernobyl had contained only 180 tons, which is about 10%, 11% maybe. Chernobyl contained only about 10 or 11% of the nuclear material that Fukushima contained. Fukushima is about 9 or 10 times more catastrophic than Chernobyl. Fukushima is the big brother, Chernobyl is the little brother. And of course, the crises at Fukushima could be made even worse at any moment by a major earthquake. In fact, a magnitude 6.0 earthquake hit northern Japan on Sunday. This is a nightmare that has no end. Every single day, massive amounts of highly radioactive water from Fukushima is systematically poisoning the entire Pacific Ocean. The damage that is being done is absolutely incalculable. Well, I hope the people who built that plant are enjoying their money. And I hope they're not eating any Pacific fish. The amount of fish taken from the Pacific Ocean is enormous. And do you think that anybody is going to stop fishing? Not likely. They're going to fish and they're going to sell it to us. We're going to consume it, and it's going to cause health problems like bone cancer and other kinds of cancer. When the thyroid absorbs iodine and cesium, look out. That creates a lot of problems. Michael Snyder is a former Washington, D.C. attorney who now publishes The Truth. His new novel, entitled The Beginning of the End, is now available on Amazon.com, and he says, please share this article with as many people as you can. The mainstream media does not seem to want to talk about this, but it is a matter that is extremely important to every man, woman, and child living in the northern hemisphere of our planet, including the dirty bastard who built all those plants. Every one of them is another Fukushima just waiting to happen. This is unconscionable that any leaders would do such a thing to the people. They're destroying our civilization. They're destroying our species. It is so evil and so irresponsible that it's very difficult for me to call them leaders. Thanks for watching. Free energy device which will end the monopoly on oil. That inventor is silenced, and 6,000 others who all made important discoveries. But since the slaves are not allowed to be free, the liberating inventions are seized by government. Government is not here for the people. Government is not by the people and for the good of the people. Government is all about greed and control and monopoly and profits. To a handful of insiders and parasites who would rather you go to work than them, because they like to vacation and spend your money, and if you end their racket, they will not have nearly as many vacation homes or lavish vacations. And so nuclear power plants are built, they fall into disaster, and the entire Pacific Ocean is poisoned. And all the fish that you eat has concentrated radioactive materials, and when you eat that fish, you glow in the dark. I hope the insiders are happy with the results. They are responsible for the murder of millions of people who die of bone cancer and other health maladies, all traced back to radioactive fish, radioactive waters. It's a totally unfair system. And look at this map. Look at what greed did. This is what greed leads to. The entire Pacific Ocean is poisoned with radioactive material. This is the result of greed. Greed makes people stupid. These people who did this are service to self types, and they will destroy themselves and their families, along with yourselves and your families. They are taking down the entire human species because of their own selfish greed. They're poisoning the earth, and we know that they took profits instead of doing what is wise. If this is our best leadership, our species has no hope of survival. These are not leaders. They're driven by greed. They don't even care about their own families. This radioactive material will poison the people of Earth for many generations. One more thing to add. They had inventions which tap into the 0 point of virtually endless supply of free energy. Mass and energy are two forms of the same thing, the aliens tell us. And so energy is mass, and mass is frozen energy. Einstein simplified it. E equals mc squared. Energy is mass at the speed of light squared. Now let me give you a quick explanation of 0 point energy. If you remove all matter from space, you would still have energy there, and it's enormous. In 1 cubic centimeter, you have so much energy that if you were to convert it to mass, the amount of mass would exceed all the visible universe that we can perceive. Will that run your air conditioner in summer, heat your house in winter, recharge your electric car? I think so. An invention comes into the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and the inventor is killed. It seems his invention threatens the powers that be and might render their monopoly on energy worthless. They can't have that, so they kill him and deny us abundant free energy forever. Another invention comes into the U.S. Patent Office, and it's seized. The inventor is threatened. He is told to be quiet about it, or his family will be killed. Another invention comes into the patent office, and yet another inventor is told that his invention will not be allowed on the basis of national security, which means it threatens those who own the oil companies, and there is still too much oil in the ground, so he can't bring us any. Take a good look at this map. The red traces back to Japan, where the Fukushima power plant disaster occurred. The people who built this nuclear power plant knew that Japan has earthquakes. They knew that a disaster was not just likely, but likely soon. It was never a question of if, but when the disaster would take place, and these greedy people allowed their own desire to get rich, not only on the construction of this power plant, but 400 others around the globe, just waiting for the right event, an earthquake or the passing of a large planet or massive system of planets, which has been predicted for 3,600 years, so nobody can claim they didn't know. They knew very well, and they watched it on the Hubble Space Telescope as it was coming in. We have a whistleblower who said he watched it for years coming in, growing in size, and his buddies were in the CIA. So we know that they knew.